Hey guys, Woods Farm here, just back out in the shop working on the Scout Car. This is Project 222, episode 15. Going to be working on some of the electrical, trying to get the fuse box sorted out. The real plan is just to get the basic wiring done so the vehicle it reliably starts and runs. That way we can move it in and out of the garage as we're working on it and things like that. We want to have a system set up so we can add circuits easily, so as we need to add things like gauges and auxiliary power and lights, it's really easy to do that. Okay, so I started the fuse box in the last video. However, I decided that I'd have to come up with a better plan. That way I'm not duplicating any work or doing anything that I need to undo later. And I figured I could actually complete the fuse box and just have it so it's plug and play, and I'll just be able to add wires into the system as I add the various circuits that we need. Essentially, I'm using various small fuse blocks to isolate different sets of circuits. For instance, we've got the main kind of systems power here, which will be operated off of a key or a switch. So the key will turn power on to this set of circuits, which will include gauges, some switches, the main ignition power, and the cooling fan. And then there'll be other blocks of fuses that isolate different circuits. This stuff will all be always hot, so there'll always be power to this stuff. Things like headlights, horn, radio intercom, interior lights, auxiliary power, and brake light. One of the components that we're going to be using in our electrical system are relays. And basically a relay is just a remotely operated electronic switch. Particularly if you want to use kind of a low amp, thinner gauge wire with a switch to control something that has a heavy draw, more amps. For instance, we're going to have a relay controlling our fan, the fan that is going to be cooling the radiator. So this will come from power, and all we're going to do is we're going to have a ground, and then there's going to be a switch. And all that happens is this switch will activate the relay and turn on the power to our fan. So I'm using a series of small fuse blocks to act as power distribution for this system. So essentially I can isolate different sets of circuits. For instance, the main kind of system is going to consist of the ignition power. We're going to need power for the fan, the cooling fan. I'm also going to want power for the gauges and for various switches, including the switch to activate the fan and also the starter push button. All of this is going to be keyed, so it'll be dead until you turn the ignition key on, and then this whole set of circuits will basically light up. And that's the plan. And that'll allow me to add other fuse blocks which can be always hot. Essentially things like lights and auxiliary stuff will always have power, but this stuff will only be powered up when the key is on. I'm sure I've mentioned this before, but be careful not to underestimate the electrical if you're doing a project like this. That happened to me on my Kuba wagon project, and it ended up spending a lot more money than I expected. In fact, when I initially budgeted the Kuba wagon, I didn't factor in any electrical, and then I came to find it was really pricey at the end of the day. All the stuff individually seems cheap, you know, $3.99 for a pack of terminals or connectors, but it adds up fast. And wire, also not cheap. So pretty soon when you're building a complete electrical system, you end up spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Wherever I can, I've tried to get wire on sale. Princess Auto. It will go on sale there. This stuff was half price for 25 feet. So I picked up several rolls, and I'll easily go through that much wire on this project. This black wire is one of the grounds for a relay. Okay, so part of my work with the wiring, I've gone ahead here and just mounted a piece of plywood where the side of the hull is going to be, and it gives me an idea of where I can mount the fuse box. I think eventually the fuse box is going to be mounted a little bit further back. This radiator is going to get replaced with something smaller, and then there's kind of like a diagonal firewall that goes around here, and I think the box will get mounted there. The battery is going to get mounted a little bit further back and down in this area. So the idea of having it mocked up like this is so that I'm not cutting wire too long. So for example, if I want to add the oil pressure warning light, I'm running the wire to exactly where the box is going to be, and I'm not, you know, eventually having either the wires too short or I'm having to cut off wire and have wastage. So I'm just trying to plan ahead, and as I add circuits to the system, and make sure I'm not running more wire than I need to. You can see here, here's a little key. This is an ignition on key, and that's part of the circuit I talked about in the diagram, where there's an always hot set of circuits, and then there's a set of circuits that are running only when the key is in the on position, and that is kind of the ignition stuff, the fan, gauges, things like that. So I'll show you what I've got so far with the box here. I've got 3 relays, one for the fan, one for the eventual headlights, and another one it turns on and off the main engine kind of systems circuits, which would be the ignition, the fan, the gauges, and the starter, that kind of stuff. That will only work with the key on. I've got another fuse block, and this is the always hot, and that is going to be stuff like auxiliary radio, lights, stuff like that. And there's room in here for more relays and eventually another block of 4 fuses. And then this whole system, it'll get secured in here, but you can see what it'll come out. And the idea is to clean this up and make sure all this is kind of hidden, but we've got a power and a ground terminal. We've got a distribution block for ground circuits. All our relays come in here, and all our wiring is ready to go. I've gone ahead and labeled things, and there's a whole bunch of stuff. Right, for example, here's power to gauges that I can eventually add. So there's a whole bunch of circuits I can add on to this. And right now it's not done, but we have enough that we can run the vehicle like this. So there's our very basic controls. We have an ignition switch, which is for the power to the motor circuit, to the distributor. There is a starter button, and there's also a switch that turns the cooling fan on and off. And eventually we are going to have an ignition key, which powers up the system, and there'll also be gauges and some warning lights all on this dash panel. Just a little bit of a sneak peek of what we're going to be working on in an upcoming video. You can see what we've been working on, and this is going to be featured in our next video, which is actually going to be something special. Okay, so we're going to wrap this video up here. We got a lot of work done on the electrical, and I'm pretty happy with the way it's turning out. We're at a point now where we can easily run and drive the vehicle, and it's easy to add circuits down the road when we have to start adding lights and auxiliary stuff. So that's going to be really easy to do. I mentioned a special video next week. It's that time of year again, International Quarantine Car Show 2021, put on by D-Boss Garage. Last year we entered the Kubelwagen, and this year we plan on entering the Scout Car and the Kubelwagen in a couple of the categories. A bit of a long shot since these vehicles are so weird and unique, but figure we'll go in the car show and see how we do. We'll be looking for your votes and support, so keep an eye open for the next video coming out. It's going to be focusing specifically on the Scout Car for the purpose of the car show. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below, and as always, thanks for watching.